Welcome to All Home Care Matters, the show where we discuss all things home care, with discussions on important age-related matters and topics. Brought to you by Enriched Life Home Care Services, the #1 rated home care provider in Michigan by Top Rated Local.
Hello, and welcome back to All Home Care Matters. If this is your first time visiting us here at the show, we want to say thank you for taking time out to be with us today. We appreciate how valuable everyone's time is, and that's why we try and make each episode here at All Home Care Matters something that will hopefully matter to you. Today, we are honored to welcome Kathy Driscoll. Kathy is the Senior Vice President and Chief Nursing Officer at Humana. Welcome, Kathy. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Kathy, let's start a little bit. I introduced you as the Chief Nursing Officer, one of your titles at Humana, but tell us about your journey and maybe a little bit about your current role at Humana.
Sure. Happy to do that. Nursing is such a personal journey for so many people, and I find that so many nurses have been inspired to become a nurse by either someone in their family who was a nurse or someone in their family was taken care of by a nurse. And it's true in my case too. My two favorite aunts were nurses. I thought they had the coolest jobs in the world. One worked in the emergency department and one worked in community health. And I really just saw that besides having what I thought were cool jobs, they made such a difference. They had these relationships, and they came home happy from work. They worked hard, but they came home happy. So I decided that I wanted to become a nurse. I wasn't quite sure what the practice setting was going to be. And I practiced in several different areas, from hospitals to long-term care. I have to say home health, where I spent probably about 15 of the 35 plus years I've been a nurse, was my favorite setting. And it probably was the setting where I learned the most about caring for people and really understanding the care people need. Going into someone's home environment, understanding them, understanding their context, their relationships, really gave me a great feeling for what I did as a nurse and what people needed. And two, really gave me great insight. I also love the care management aspect, and that was really coordinating. You know, healthcare is somewhat siloed, shall we say, and really helping to get all the pieces together, especially for my home health patients, was really rewarding. Came to Humana about 10 years ago, and I've had several roles at Humana doing operations, spent about 1.5 years in innovation, which was really an interesting peek into what healthcare of the future could be. And then probably my favorite role that I've ever had is the role that I'm honored to currently have, and that's Chief Nursing Officer. We have about 10,000 nurses and many other clinicians at Humana, therapists, social workers, physicians, pharmacists, but really my job is to be an advocate for our nurses, to really listen to what nurses have to say and what nurses need, and to make sure that we as an organization are valuing our nurses and the precious resources that they bring.
Absolutely. And I know my mother was actually a nurse, and I remember back in like kindergarten, first grade, she worked for a family physician, and it was just down the street from our kindergarten. And anytime somebody got hurt, they always ran to me, call your mom, call your mom. It's just, it wasn't call the doctor, it was call the nurse. And, so there's such admiration and respect for the profession and the work of all nurses. Why do you think there's such a great emphasis on the care in the home? And what does this mean for how nurses need to be prepared to provide care in the home and now and in the future?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One, I think most of us would say, hey, we really want to be at home. We don't necessarily want to go to a place. All respect for care that's provided in facilities. That's an important part of our healthcare system. But I think we learned a couple of things. For example, during COVID, maybe an acute care hospital wasn't the safest place to be for all of our folks who need care. I think about 85% of seniors in the United States have at least one chronic condition, and that puts them at risk for many different things. So I think that's one reason: the safety in the home, the familiarity, the environment around your home. We think a lot about quality of life. We think about caregivers, formal and informal rather, that we have in the home. It just is someplace that tends to be more comforting. I think the other thing is, with the advent of technology, there's a lot more that we can do in the home. Skilled nursing, all kinds of therapy. Back in the day, maybe it wasn't quite as sophisticated. We have all kinds of very complex wound care and diabetic care and cardiac care that really can go on in the home right now. And much of that is enabled by technology as well. So I think that there really is just this, there's much more we can do in the home. There's more concentration of people who are skilled in providing care in the home, and it really is a preferred place for people to get care.
Just out of curiosity, Kathy, for your experience, what was it that really drew you to the home health side of healthcare rather than the facility setting?
I think the first thing that drew me was really that opportunity to have relationships. I found where I was working in the hospital, although it was very rewarding, it was a little more transactional. I was on different floors with different patients on different days, and the time I was with them was great. I'm sure that I made an impact, and they made an impact on me. But I loved being able to form a relationship. And I think, when we go back to why are nurses the most trusted profession for so many years in a row, I think it's that ability to form a relationship, to influence, and, really that trust. People have to know you. They have to see you, and maybe see you more than once. So that ability to have strong relationships was very rewarding to me. And I think from a personal point of view, and I hear this with many nurses today too, it did allow me to have a more flexible schedule. When I entered the home health arena, I had young children, and I didn't necessarily need to work a 7 to 3 or 3 to 11 shift. I needed a little more flexibility, and home health provided that as well. So I think between the relationships and the flexibility, that's what got me interested. And then I just loved, I just loved the practice area, and all that could be done in the home.
Yeah. I know with our staff at our company, that's one of the biggest issues, or really things that they enjoy the most, is being able to build that bond and that familiarity and that trust and that relationship with the patient or the client. Because, they said, when you're in an institutionalized setting or a facility type setting, you're really just going through your notes, you're going through the boxes, and you're having to go room to room. And they just find that they like having that interpersonal, relationship, rather than just, here's your pills, or, let's get you up, and then they got to move on. And a lot of the staff who we have, at least, they've had that experience in this hospital setting or a nursing home or a long-term care facility. And they said, I would never go back to that. Not that, there's a place and there's a role for those settings, of course, but they said, I just got into this for the helping and the relationship side of it, more than just the rote memorization, if you will, of just going right down the line and getting to bond with these people and making a difference.
Yeah, I think you really, especially in the home, can see the difference that you make. You're seeing a person who's really a person, not just a person in a bed. You're seeing them in their environment. You're seeing their family members or their friends or whomever is there. And you really do see that difference that's made. And, it's pretty cool too, I think, the autonomy. So maybe you've worked in several different settings, but you're a professional and your judgment is respected, and you have a team, but you all work a little bit independently. So I think that those are some of the really wonderful things about home health that attract clinicians these days.
Absolutely. And I believe you guys provided a video here of Nurse Becky called Day in the Life. So we'll play that right now.
I remembered my dad, no matter what position we were in financially, he expressed this importance about giving to people because there's always someone who needs more help than you do. My name is Becky Hutchison, and I'm a registered nurse case manager with CenterWell Home Health. With the encouragement of an old manager to try something new, that's how I found CenterWell Home Health. One of the happiest changes I've made in my career, and I'm really thankful to work with the team that I do. I'm not sure I would even still be in nursing had I not been given the opportunity to transition to home health. I was questioning whether I was really making a difference in people's lives, and I wholeheartedly feel like at this point I am making a difference.
I had already been through 6 weeks of nurses poking and taking numbers, so I thought this was it. This is the way I'm going to live. Just do the best you can. But then CenterWell Home Health came, and they didn't see it that way.
With Gaydeen, I was brought in for a very specific reason. However, after talking with her, meeting with her, and learning what her goals were, we noticed that she had some symptoms going on as a result of her cardio function.
Becky was very concerned about the swelling in my legs, and she took the initiative to contact the doctor. So that was reassuring. I really felt like I was in good hands.
Because of our Keeping Hearts at Home program, I was able to bring in the mynicus and do some very detailed investigating with her about why she was having some of these symptoms. Because of that program, I was able to alleviate some of those symptoms completely and really reduce some of the effects she was having that changed her ability to be more independent.
I was a very sick gal. I didn't know that at the time, but I recovered, and I'm very grateful for that.
My dream growing up was to help people in the medical field and to be a mom. I genuinely feel lucky to work in an environment like CenterWell Home Health. Pushes me to be a better nurse while maintaining this wonderful balance with my family and my spouse and my own self-care. Here, I can really, truly center myself and know that as a whole person, I'm making good choices.
So, Kathy, tell us, what is Humana specifically doing to support nurses to learn about and enter home health as their practice setting?
Well, you know that Humana has two basic areas. One is our insurance business, which mostly focuses on Medicare Advantage care of seniors. And that's a really growing and expanding area of our business and an area of insurance coverage in the United States. The other area is our payer agnostic branded CenterWell, and that includes our senior-based primary care clinics, our pharmacy, our CenterWell pharmacy. And several years ago, we acquired what was then called Kindred at Home, now branded as CenterWell Home Health. CenterWell Home Health operates in about 38 states. We have over 350 locations. So this is a large part of our organization now, and we really started thinking about, we have lots of roles for nurses in our broader organization, but what do we need to do to ensure that we're developing nurses who are interested in this area and who are really equipped to succeed in this area? It's a growing area for us, as we talked about a little earlier. It's a growing area because so much care is delivered in the home. So we started thinking about two things. One of them is retention of all of the great clinicians that we already have at the organization. What do those clinicians need to be their best so that they can care for their patients every day? And one of those we already talked about, it's flexibility, and that means something different to everyone. It might be the hours that you work. It might be the opportunity to have some growth and development. We do lots of continuing education internally. We're always looking for our clinicians to provide input in new technology, whether it's around technology using artificial intelligence around wound care, or things like voice to text so that you don't have to spend quite as much time documenting. But what are the things that we want to listen to hear? What are the things that matter to our nurses, to our clinicians in the field, so that they stay with us and they continue to grow and be fulfilled? But we also need to build a pipeline. And that is a little different these days than maybe it was some years ago. One of the areas that we've really leaned into is our academic practice partnerships. So we have over 50 schools that we're partnering with for things like clinical rotations, thinking about, how do we influence curriculum today? There used to be a lot more emphasis on community health in a baccalaureate program, for example. You used to have more experiences out in the community in areas like home health. That really has gotten a little bit lost today. So with our partner schools, we're really, trying to partner on what are the skills that are needed and what are the experiences that are needed. We can provide some of the experiences in our home health locations, but what else can we do? For example, we provided some funding with Emory University in Atlanta for their College of Nursing. They were expanding their simulation capabilities. So we helped them, and they built a simulated home apartment where nursing students could come and think about, what is it like to take care of somebody in the home? How can we make that comfortable for them? How can they practice so their skills are done in a simulated environment, and they can be comfortable when they actually go out into the home there? We found that simulations are a really good way to get people comfortable and to help them, kind of jumpstart. We endowed the College of Nursing Dean of University of Houston and have participated in development with them as well. We found kind of a mini Maymester course, 1 week of simulation, 1 week in the field was a great introduction there too. So really just thinking about how can we create this pipeline? How can we get people exposed to and interested in fields in addition to acute care hospitals, but in post-acute fields like home health? It may be when you graduate from school, you're going to go right into home health, but it also may be you're going to work a few years in another setting. And we want you to remember, home health is a great place to be. And you can use your skills there. I think sometimes people are a little surprised about the level of skill that our clinicians have, the things they can do in the home. They have preconceived notions that just aren't true. So it's so important to expose there.
And I think it's also important for education coming from the healthcare providers about home health. I can't tell you how many families we come into contact with where they didn't know that home health was even an option, that Medicare would cover it. Well, just before I get to my next follow-up question, do you have any insight into that, Kathy, as to why there's like a communication breakdown or a lack of that resource being mentioned to families upon discharge?
Yeah, I think we could all do a better job, even in situations like this, in helping people to understand there are options. It's not just hospital or nothing. There are a lot of different things that can be done. And I think it's on all of us also to educate our colleagues, our healthcare colleagues, physicians, discharge planners, et cetera, so that people do have the education, professionals have the education. And I think the most powerful thing is storytelling. So just, as we talked about in the beginning, how many nurses are inspired to become nurses, just having, a family member who's received care at home or something like that, we need to hear those stories, and we need to be able to publish them in a broad variety of areas. I think that, when COVID hit, there was a lot more focus on healthcare, nurses, what's being done in the home. And we just need to continue that. We need to take that momentum and really highlight it, because there's some amazing stories. And I think they're all so personal. When people hear it or experience it, kind of they're sold for life on the value of home health. But it is something that we need to really double down on.
Yeah, and I think just from like a Medicare standpoint and a health insurance standpoint too, home health plays such a crucial role in helping to reduce readmission rates, make sure the patient is following their, prescription regimen, all these different things, getting to their follow-up appointments. So I applaud you guys. Before we move on though, I just want to follow up on the simulation you guys established at Emory. Do you know if that is one of the first of its kind in the country? Because I've never heard of nursing school implementing a practical or a lab, or however you want to describe it, a clinical course where the nurses are, implementing care inside of a residential setting rather than a clinical setting.
Well, homes could be clinical settings too. We bring the clinical to the home.
Sure.
I think there definitely are other schools who are doing simulations. This is a concentrated environment, and everything from telehealth to, how do you perform these different skills in the home can be done there. So there are many schools with simulation labs. Interestingly, one thing that we found with many of our partner schools is just the need to write the simulations that were relevant and really portrayed what you'll experience in the home too. So they may have had a lab, they may have been able to make a little corner that looks like, somebody's apartment or home. Emory has, a true apartment there, and some other schools do too. But we have actually gathered some of our home health nurses to create these simulation scenarios so that people could really understand it, and just kind of open sourced it to our academic partners. We really want to give people a real experience, not necessarily something that somebody who hasn't worked in the field had. So, I think there's all levels of it, and we need to make sure that we're preparing people for what they're really going to see. And what they're really going to be doing, because self-confidence is so important in home health too, because for some people the fear is, I'm going to be alone there, but you're really not. You have kind of a team around you, but self-confidence and building that is super important.
That's tremendous. Thanks, Kathy. So the focus is really on exposing individuals and nursing programs to all of these experiences to help them begin a sustainable career in a practice setting of their choosing, be it home health, where they're rewarded with flexibility, the autonomy, and a unique opportunity to care for patients in their home, or another setting such as a hospital, community-based nursing, etc. But is there an opportunity to introduce a nursing career earlier than at the college or university level and get a head start on the preparation of the future generation of our nurses?
So it's so interesting. I probably never thought as much about the importance of that as I have in the past few years. And I will say that one of the people that really got me thinking was Dr. Ernest Grant, a nurse who is the immediate past president of the American Nurses Association. And I remember him saying to me when we were talking about creating pipelines, he said, and he is a very tall African-American man who has been a nurse, specializes in burn care, just an extraordinary man. He said, I go to grammar schools because I want to inspire grammar school students to look at me and say, I want to be you. Maybe you're not what I think about. I don't even know what people think about a nurse looks like, but I want to go to grammar schools and start inspiring kids. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if we can manage grammar school, but maybe when you get to junior high and high school too. So his words always echo in my mind there, because I think pipelines and the perception of nursing as a career, and I can do this and I can look like many different people, is so important. But we, for example, had a wonderful experience. Humana is based in Louisville, Kentucky. And during Nurses Month, we had our Nurse Advisory Council, which is kind of like a professional governance council of nurse leaders from all over our organization. We had them there for an on-site forum. And one day we had students from Grace James Academy in Louisville, and it's an all girls, Afrocentric STEM charter junior high, and now they're high school there too in Louisville. And we had about 20 of the students who came, and we had our nurses talk about, what does it take to become a nurse, provide that storytelling, provide some hands-on opportunity to, how do you take blood pressures and things like that. But really, really inspiring. And, the next question is, how do you continue to inspire and support students like this who show an interest in the healthcare field? And you can talk to them about, hey, did you know that care takes place in the home? It's not just a hospital. They had some amazing insights, and I'm thinking these are 7th and 8th graders. They talked about how do you handle trauma, because people are sick and not everybody gets well. How do you as nurses handle that? And I just thought it was so insightful. And they were just, I was like, I felt good about the future when you can talk to people like this. So, we're trying to think about how can we not only focus on our colleges of nursing and students there, but really how can we go back further, and how can we, again, tell those stories so that people are exposed to the different types of settings that nurses can practice in, and the different opportunities, and what do they need from us to support them along the way. So it was one of the best received things that we did with our council. They were all, just found it so rewarding, and we want to continue to do that across the country in the different areas that we operate in.
That's wonderful. Now, I have a note here about Madison, one of the students who participated in the event, and she said she liked learning to use equipment to monitor blood pressures, heartbeat, and temperature, and she said, I really like to help people. At the end of the day, that's what nursing really is. It's helping people, and I think we have a clip here from the news or some photos that we're going to share, but, when you hear feedback like that has to be the goal that you guys are trying to accomplish, right? To inspire these young boys and young girls to pursue that career in nursing for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. We want people to think about this is a really, really good opportunity for you. You can do so many things. And, we want people to know that nurses are wonderful people. So whether you choose to be a nurse or whether you choose to be a physician, or I think Madison was a labor and delivery nurse, a pediatric oncologist, or an orthodontist, any of those, recognize the value of nursing. And we recognize that, we are healthcare teams. And as long as people understand that there's different settings, they understand the difference that people can make, and they understand what their colleagues in healthcare do, I think it's win-win for everybody.
That's tremendous. Kathy, you talked about retaining nurses as a big focus, and that creating a work culture that is supportive of nurses. What does that all include, and how do you build this for nurses in home health and generally in just in other settings?
Yeah, I think it starts with listening. And, at Humana, our nurses are distributed in a lot of different areas. I talked about senior-based primary care. I talked about home health. We have nurses who work in virtual roles in our insurance business and things like that. Informatics, you name it, we have nurses in those positions. And I think that's a really good thing. But one of the things that we needed to do, it's important for nurses and for everybody to feel that they belong. So we really focused on building a community where we have lots of different ways to listen to our nurses, whether it's through sentiment survey, whether it's through, I had mentioned our Nurse Advisory Council. They represent all the different areas. They're bringing the voice of the nurse to us. So listening to what nurses value, listening to what matters to them, and acting on that. One of the things that I think that healthcare settings are becoming much more aware of is the need to support well-being. And that's something that's kind of ingrained in our culture in general. So whether it's physical well-being, emotional well-being, financial well-being, those are areas that we not only support in different ways, but we track what the outcomes are. Some years ago, for example, we just saw these really high levels of stress with our nursing population. So we focused different types of activities or opportunities with our nursing population, and really were able to move the needle. We're not going to eliminate stress, but what are the ways that you can be healthy and deal with it in a healthy way? So that's one of the things. The other thing, really in the culture is the opportunity to grow. And growth doesn't, for some people, that means you become a leader of nurses, or a leader of, nurses and non-nurses too. For some, it's just really becoming an expert in what you do. You may be the wound care specialist, or you may be the rehab specialist. Being able to take some time in your day and have that fulfilling development opportunity, growth, and being able to highlight it too. For example, we, with our nursing community, have a quarterly call with our CEO. So we're always highlighting, there was a new wound care technology that they talked about the other day. These are nurses that might not always have the opportunity to talk to and present to our CEO. So just really making sure that our nurses feel valued, and that they're inspired, and that they are an important part of the success of our organization has been really important to us.
That's wonderful. What would you say, Kathy, is the number one most important issue to nurses? Would it be feeling valued, or is there another thing that might be more important to them?
Yeah, I think there's a couple, because remember, we're a multi-generational group. So I think there's not necessarily one size fits all, but I would say in the top few, it's feeling valued, feeling tied to a sense of purpose. And you talked about that with your staff before. And that flexibility, I would say those are the top three. And I think going along with feeling valued always is making sure that you're compensated appropriately. I think that's a part of value, not all of value, but I would say those three are important. The one other thing that, I think we hear more and more about in every setting, I think we've been paying attention to it in home health for a long time, but is that feeling of safety too. And I think physical safety and psychological safety has a lot of eyes on now in every setting.
Yeah. Now, we talked previously about, the impacts of COVID, and I know here locally where we're at, our traditional community hospitals, a lot of them have closed down their emergency rooms. They've canceled all elective surgeries, and it just goes on, and they're all being transported to our main, university hospitals. Are you seeing any of that effects on the nursing staff?
Well, I think COVID was a hard time for so many people. And, I think that part of it was reevaluating, is this the environment that I want to work in? And, even talking about things like safety. Again, in home health, I think we've been dealing, because we go into a lot of different situations and everything, we've been dealing with physical safety for a long time. But obviously we continue to, be able to use technology and other educational things there too. But I see a lot more hospital nurses who are just saying, this may not be the setting for me. This may not be what I want to do with a floor full of, at the time it was COVID positive patients, folks that were pulled into, maybe an ICU that weren't the regular ICU nurses. There was fluctuating staffing because people were out and needed to be out while they were symptomatic, et cetera, et cetera. So, a really kind of concerning statistic that we saw and we still see. So it can't all be COVID. almost a third of the nurses in the United States are considering leaving the profession. And that's not in one setting, but, you know, all of those things that we talked about, you know, not feeling supported, not having work-life balance, not feeling, you know, that you have flexibility or that you're valued and things like that. They contribute to this thought that, is this really where I want to be? And I think we do see more turnover, people maybe not leaving the profession, but going from one setting or one organization to another. So, you know, I can't emphasize enough the importance of this strong culture, sense of belonging, listening to, you know, what nurses in each organization value, what do they need? Because, you know, this population is the heartbeat of all of our organizations. And if we can't take care of our nurses, they can't take care of our patients or clients or members.
Absolutely. I want to just kind of wrap up here with a couple more questions, and I want to thank you so much for your time today, Kathy. What do you find are some of the challenges at the level of schools of nursing or nursing schools?
Yeah, when we go back and think about that pipeline, there are some amazing, not good data points. You know, just going back about a year and a half, over 90,000 otherwise qualified applicants to schools of nursing were turned down. And that's just such a shocking data point when we think about there's a nursing shortage in the United States. There's really a nursing shortage globally. But some of the reasons for that, you know, one, there's not enough faculty. Nurses who are faculty in nursing schools, you know, generally have either a master's degree or a doctoral degree, and the salaries just don't keep up with what the salaries would pay an advanced practice nurse, you know, out in a more commercial setting. And I think because of that, the average age of nursing faculty is increasing too. So, you know, you have folks that are going to reach, you know, retirement age or whatever soon. And I think that the other part of it is there's just not enough clinical rotations that are available. That was a big problem during COVID for obvious reasons. That stopped. And it's become harder and harder for whatever the setting, whether it's a hospital, whether it's home health, to accommodate clinical settings. That's one of the reasons that we've really tried to double down on that and provide these experiences. And I think it's another reason why people are looking to things like simulation, to technology. How can we augment, or how can we have something? It's not going to replace everything, because you need to get out in the field. You need to have these experiences. But how can we maybe combine things to provide the experience in a more scalable way? But it's very worrisome if we don't have enough nurses now and we're not having enough in our pipeline there.
You know, and I want to follow up on that, and you please correct me if I'm wrong. It seemed as though during COVID, they were pushing nurses through nursing school a lot quicker because they needed that staffing. Is that accurate, Kathy?
Well, I think that, you know, probably it varies by school, but, you know, there's a lot of focus on practice-ready nurses. And, you know, kind of going back to what's the combo, a lot of nursing schools had to rely on simulations because they couldn't get the face-to-face experience just because of COVID, and it was prolonged there. So I think that you see that there is, you know, a generation of nurses that maybe they don't have that confidence. Maybe they don't feel that they were prepared enough. Maybe they're the ones that are questioning, is this the role for me? So I think that we've had to go back as, you know, the employer organizations and really make sure that, you know, whether it's through things like externships or residencies, that we are providing, you know, that extra. It was an unprecedented time. I think schools are focusing much more on practice ready and competency based learning. But I think that there was a point in time there that all clinicians felt that they maybe weren't as prepared as they would have liked to be.
Right. I'm just wondering, with the number of nurses that you shared that are leaving the profession and we're not replacing those numbers, are you aware of any plans or anything that the schools can implement to help replenish the lack of nurses?
Well, it depends upon the state. Some of the states, especially for their state schools, are expanding the numbers that they can accommodate. Some schools have finite numbers. Still, you need the faculty. One of the things that we're exploring, and I know that some other healthcare organizations have, can we use some of our employees to be adjunct faculty? Like, wouldn't they be great faculty that could, talk about community-based health and home health and things like that too? Because we do have masters and doctorally prepared nurses. And I know some of the larger healthcare systems have been thinking about and piloting some things like that too. I think the other thing that, we have to look at, how do we use technology in ways that they really are tools? Like, how do we reduce the burden of documentation so that nurses can really practice what they learn too? I think that that's something that we hear when someone graduates from school. They're just not prepared for the volume of documentation required. How do we use things like natural language processing, the voice to text, summarization? How do we use it as tools so that we can that's another way to increase capacity so our nurses can really spend their time with patients and clients, really practice at the top of their license. And that's something that we can do. But I think it just takes a focus from all of us who are providers, payers, et cetera, organizationally, to support increasing the number of nurses that we're training, as well as the schools there. So those partnerships are really important.
Thank you. Kathy Driscoll, the Senior Vice President and Chief Nursing Officer at Humana, I appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for being such a champion for nurses everywhere and for home health care, which we're big supporters and proponents of. I want to leave you with one last question, if it's okay.
Okay.
I'm going to put you in charge of healthcare in the United States. In 5 years from now, we talk. What have you implemented and what have you changed?
Oh, I'm in charge. Okay. That's great. I think that one of the things that we have to implement, just what I was talking about, we have to be able to use technology to decrease things like documentation burden, to really allow our nurses, our clinicians to work at top of license. I think that we need to make sure that we have nurses at the top level of organizations, really at the C-suite, because nurses understand and value other nurses. And then concurrently, I think we need to use that storytelling that we talked about so that not just nurses understand nurses, but our CEOs, our physicians, et cetera, our policymakers. We need to make sure that we are nurturing, supporting, inspiring nurses from a policy point of view, from an economic point of view, a safety point of view, all the things that we talked about. So I would say, let's just get rid of the clutter that's there, state by state regulations and things like that. And let's just focus on, supporting nurses so we can drive healthcare forward in a very positive way for all.
All right. You have my vote, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today here at All Home Care Matters. All Home Care Matters is here to help families as they navigate these long-term care issues. We invite you to visit us at allhomecarematters.com, where there's a private, secure, fillable form where you can give us feedback, show ideas, or if you have questions. Every form is read and responded to. And remember, you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcast streaming platforms or watch the show on our official YouTube channel. Just make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. We'd also like to say thank you again to Kathy Driscoll for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next time here at All Home Care Matters.